In today's video, I'm going to do a review of Warcradle's Rio Sonoro MDF Terrain. Before we get into today's video, I wanted to share about this month's GGGG. Each month, Bob the Beholder picks one of my Patreon supporters to receive a gratitude gift. And for March of 2021, it's going to be Street Fighter, the board game, that is going to deliver at the end of this month. So if you're interested in that, check out my Patreon page in the link below, and you might be chosen to receive the GGGG. A couple of weeks ago, one of my coworkers told me about a Cthulhu-themed skirmish game called Mythos by Warcradle. I went ahead and ordered 2 of the starter boxes and am working on painting those up, and in the meantime was interested in picking up some terrain and was really interested in Warcradle's Dunsmith MDF Terrain that they sell, but here in my local store they were out of stock. And instead, I picked up the Rio Sonoro line of MDF Terrain. This is my first foray into MDF Terrain, and so I'm going to share my thoughts about what it was like building and what I think of it. Now, Rio Sonoro line is meant for Wild West Exodus, which is a Western theme punk style game, but I think it'll work with almost any other game and will definitely work for Mythos. Red Oak is also a line from them, and the unusual thing about it is that it is primed with this grayish blue color, as shown here, with the intention that people would paint it up. But for me, I didn't really want something that I wanted to paint, but rather was pre-colored. So rather than getting the Western style from Red Oak, I went ahead and got the Rio Sonoro line of their terrain. Now this clock tower as well as the gallows I did buy from the Red Oak set, and I spray painted this with a light brown in order to make it brown colored, with the thought that I might paint it up to make it more weathered. But after spray painting it, I realized that the laser etch lines in the MDF is so small that I was worried I was going to cover it up with any paint that I was going to put on there. So I'm just leaving it as is, even though the color is really flat and doesn't have a lot of depth. There are people who did buy the Red Oak set in some playthrough videos that I saw, and they didn't bother to paint it at all. They just kept it sort of this bluish gray color. But I prefer actually the pre-color from the Rio Sonoro line. So that's why I chose this set over the other one. Also, these models seem to be cheaper than the Red Oak set, so that's the other reason why I dove into this one. Now, these are the 4 models from the line. I didn't buy the dwelling, nor did I buy, there was these catwalks or boardwalks, and I didn't buy those either. And these kits are cheaper than I thought they were going to be. So this is the biggest set that they have in this line, and it is the Town Hall, and it cost me $30. That's a discounted price, and your online store will probably have discounted prices as well, but I paid really around $29 for this one, and I really like this set a lot, and I like how it has different levels that you can pull off and look into, and also comes with furniture. So this next piece here is the foundry, and I like how industrial it looks with all of the gears, and the inside looks really awesome with this HVAC stuff all over the place, this giant crane up top. So this is a really unique piece, and I think this is a cool set. And this piece was $19. The dwelling here actually comes in 2 different colors, so I received the one with sort of the grayish siding, and I like that it has these stairs that come up here as well as a little balcony in the back. And this dwelling was only $14.50, so pretty good deal on this. And then finally, the workshop here looks sort of like a blacksmith shop, but has a table saw, and the top actually doesn't come off. You can leave one of the sides unglued in order to access the inside. I just went ahead and glued everything. I didn't really care, because for most of my games, I don't actually go inside of buildings. My skirmish games only have miniatures sort of either sitting on top or just moving around. So I didn't really care that I couldn't get inside. But this workshop was $16.50. And then just as comparison, the clock tower and the gallows, which is part of the red oak line, cost me $22. So this cost more than the foundry. So again, I think the Rio Sonoro line is actually a better deal and priced lower than the red oak line. So as my first foray into MDF, there's a couple of things that surprised me. Not only sort of the affordable cost of it, and at least with this line, the pre-painted features of it, which I really like a lot. What did I think of MDF Terrain, and am I going to buy more into the future? So I definitely think it is a step up from pre-printed cardboard terrain. For example, Metromorph as well as Battle Systems, they come out with really good cardboard terrain. The great thing about it is you don't need to paint it at all, and it sets up relatively easy and packs away flat. But this is a step up because you're getting a little bit better depth and color and durability with these buildings. Now it is going to cost more, obviously, and you're not going to get as much variation in terms of the coloring, but I'm pretty happy with how these pre-painted ones look, because the burn marks actually from the laser cutting the pieces and etching it gives it a weathered look. Whereas this piece here that I just painted one color is relatively flat. There is depth with the laser burns onto these pieces. So I actually like that. So as a pre-painted piece, I think these guys look pretty good. Also, something to note is that these pieces definitely smell like burned wood. I don't know how long it's going to take before that smell goes away, but when I opened up these packets, there's definitely a burned wood smell. It doesn't bother me a whole lot, but if that is going to be an issue for you, you might want to consider that before buying any MDF Terrain. The quality of the kits overall is really good, although I did have some building issues. First of all, the instructions for Rio Sonoro do not come in the package. You have to go to their website and download a PDF in order to follow the directions, which wasn't an issue for me. The red oak line actually does have a printed sheet included with the kit to show you how to build it. Now, the strange thing about Rio Sonoro, and I'm not sure why this is the case, but none of the pieces in the assembly guide has labeled each of the individual pieces. In red oak it does, but here it doesn't really label it. It just shows a diagram of gluing the pieces together. And on the cut sheet, these pieces are actually labeled, but there's no reference in the assembly guide to the numbers or the letters. That's not a huge deal because it's super clear what the pieces are. You're not going to get confused and accidentally glue a piece that you're not supposed to. But overall, I wish that it was labeled a little bit more, just so that I could reference and know which sheet that I'm punching the pieces out from. Also, there's just a few quality issues where here on the roof, this side piece across the top of the roof is too short. It's a hair's breadth too short, and also the top piece up here, this plank that goes across is actually too long. So I just took some sandpaper and sanded the edges down in order to get this piece to fit. But for the most part, everything else went together relatively easily. The other surprise is that it took a lot longer to put these pieces together than I thought it was going to take. So I thought the benefit of having MDF Terrain over 3D printing is that I don't have to spend days printing out pieces for my terrain. But I think that is offset by the amount of time that it's going to take to actually glue these pieces together. So for example, this dwelling here took me about 4 hours to build. And then this town hall took me about 5 or 6 hours to build. So all 5 of these sets and pieces that I have in front of you took me longer than building my Prusa MK3S. And that took me 12 hours. It didn't bother me too much because I like the whole process of assembly. As a kid, I made plastic model kits and I just love putting the pieces together. But if you're in a hurry, actually getting an MDF kit isn't going to save you a lot of time. So for example, if you have a tournament coming up over the weekend and you go out and buy these kits on Friday thinking that you're going to be able to build everything before the tournament, that's just not going to happen unless you're a lot faster at building than I am. Also, you're probably going to glue your fingers at some point with super glue, and that's what I use primarily. But I do think thematically it looks super good. This is going to fit either a steampunk universe or a Western universe, and so I think it's going to be relatively versatile for me. Again, I would have rather have picked the Dunsmouth set because that's specifically for mythos, sort of the 1920s, 1930s, or a fisherman's port, but this is going to stand in pretty well and work for mythos. So compared to 3D terrain, I think at the end of the day, I will stick to 3D terrain because the amount of time that it takes me to paint up 3D terrain is less than it takes me to put these pieces together. Of course, the print time is a lot longer, but I'm doing other things while my 3D printers are working. So I don't really count that as assembly time for creating terrain. The amount of time that I'm actually putting into painting terrain is relatively quick and is going to be faster than actually gluing these pieces together. So I think I do prefer 3D printed terrain over MDF terrain, but this is definitely not something I'm adverse to, especially because of the affordability of these sets, and especially when they are pre-painted like this, I wouldn't mind getting more of it. But for now, I think for the most part, I am going to stick to 3D printed terrain. If this video was helpful to you, please hit the like button and make sure to subscribe as I come out with a lot of terrain videos. And again, if you're interested in the gratitude gift, go ahead and check out the link below and become a patron. Thanks so much for watching. Happy gaming, happy hobbying. We'll see you next time.